Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Leo Zagami Show with Leo and Christy for another great episode in which we will finally investigate this new Pope. People were doubting Leo Zagami. Well, first of all, let's thank our sponsors, and then we will go with the first Black Pope. And
he's white.
Oh, I'm sure he's not. Now, well, guys, there is some news that I definitely want to make public today, but as well as also the reality of the Jesuit who controls him and everything else that we have in this great moment. Turning point in history. You see, we have a white spoke Black Pope. It's not me saying it. It's actually what? Here we are. White smoke, Black Pope. Generally, you say Leo the 14th has a Louisiana African roots, and we discovered that his grandparents identified as black, and they were one from Haiti and the other one from New Orleans. Basically, part of his family comes from a voodoo tradition. That is very interesting and can also add to everything else that we will be saying today about this Pope, including, of course, his Jesuit controller. But first of all, let's thank our sponsors.
We had a lot of sponsors this week. First, we had Alex, Aldo Rivera, Aaron Lesher, Daniel Estes, and Margaret Zotaminta. Thank you guys so much. Now we're here for the month because of you. Thank you.
Yes, that's the thing, guys. If you want to become sponsors of our show, you can do it, as they do also my Italian show. No, I mean, it's a way of supporting us.
We don't do the webinar things that people were suggesting. We don't do that.
What is the webinar?
It's like where you make a thing and then people pay. Like,
no,
we don't do that because we want to be, public. So
yes, guys.
Maybe some people really can't afford,
yes,
anything.
Absolutely. So. And guys, aside from being able to help us out, of course, with the GoFundMe and with the Cash App, I want to also thank those people who have made this book a bestseller this week. This is no joke, guys. It was a long time since I had a bestseller, and now I want to show you Leo Zagami in his bestseller format. Thanks to all of you, all the people who follow us. Of course, I've been giving a lot of interviews on a variety of channels, and I want to thank all those people who have guested me on their channels, making this new book, Volume 12 of My Confessions, History, Secret Societies and the Politics of the Jesuit, New World Order and the Luciferian Court, a bestseller, in several categories. This is incredible, guys. It hasn't happened in a very long time, but it
when
is.
When was the last time it happened?
Well, I don't know. The last Pope was a bestseller, absolutely. And after that, I guess Volume 7 was also a book that went very well. I think it reached bestseller status. We had also some success with Volume 8, but this is really going off the roof, as they say.
Off the charts.
Off the charts, not up there. Okay. Please share this video. We are, of course, still in our modest settings. As you know, we have been removed many times from YouTube. We managed to survive. We are on X, but today, for some reason, in the last couple of days, Rumble is having some serious problems, and we are no longer able to broadcast on Rumble. That means that a lot of our audience today, half of our audience will not be following us. We might upload this, of course, later on Rumble. It's not going to be the same thing because it's not going to be live. But we really want to address this issue, probably a technical issue with between Rumble and maybe our streaming service. I really don't know. It's something that has never happened before. I know that Rumble went down That's official yesterday. But then
maybe they're still having problems.
Maybe they're still having problems. However, guys, if you can please share this video on your social networks, that at least will give us some visibility. And of course, we had last week's video that reached a few thousand. I mean, we had a great success. We also had an increase in our subscription, so that's also very good. But of course, this week was the week we saw the Pope, and it wasn't the Filipino Tagle, it wasn't an African Pope, but it's just as insidious and even more woke. Christy,
his name is Pope Leo.
Yeah.
I was so mad. I cried about it.
I know. It's not so good. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. Christy, who are the sponsors of today's show?
We said it already, Mark.
Yes, but we want to thank them very much with maybe an applause.
Oh, well, why don't you applaud them then?
Okay, let's applaud them like we do with the Italian show. This is for our sponsors.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for supporting our show, and we will proceed with the news that, of course, is exclusive to this show. I mean, I give a lot of interviews. I, of course, talk about my new book, which is based on the Jesuits, and the Jesuits are behind this Pope. And there is a character I've been talking about in this book in particular called James Martin. He is Pope Leo XIV Jesuit supervisor, just as Father Lombardi was Joseph Ratzinger Jesuit supervisor, as I mentioned in this book. And just like, well, of course, Pope Francis couldn't have a Jesuit supervisor because he was a Jesuit himself, so he went directly to the Black Pope. But we want to know more about this supervisor of Pope Francis, and we want to also know more about the way the media has orchestrated this whole thing, because this is a fiercely anti-Trumpian Pope who has been tweeting since Trump was running for his primaries against him. Yes, it's true. He actually was voting in the primaries of the Republican Party, but this guy was voting Jeb Bush, who was a Catholic and a Knights of Columbus, who, as we know, lost, and he was a very bad choice if he ever came to power, that Jeb Bush. Ooh. In any case, in the last 2 days, since the election of this new Pope, all the various anchormen, have all been in Rome, and David Muir from ABC with his famous show, which is the mainstream news here, the most watched in America. They say that. I don't know if that's the case, but in any case, I want to show you how James Martin, the Jesuit supervisor of Pope Leo, was behind the scenes from the very first minute, giving advice to ABC and David Muir. Check this out, it's very important.
Breaking news here at the Vatican, the American Pope.
Oh, yes, breaking news, the American Pope. And soon after that, you have the usual things that are said. But then at one point into the discussion, we have the arrival of James Martin. And for those who don't know who James Martin is, I'm going to soon present this character who, like I said, is a protagonist of my latest book. So it's important that we analyze who James Martin is. I'm, of course, finding the actual spot where he was. Just a second. Here he is. James Martin arrives. And remember, guys, he's not there by coincidence. Now I'm going to show you the story of this Jesuit who has been supervising the rise of Pope Leo XIV for the last few years on behalf of the Jesuit order. So this is an exclusivity. I mean, I'm bringing you behind the scenes on the Jesuit controllers of Pope Leo. And so I think that is a good thing, so people can finally understand who is behind this new Pope, who is an Augustinian. Like I said, he will not be of the Jesuit order, but he will be controlled by the Jesuits.
Peru, where he helped the poor. And today, he sent a message to the world in choosing to go by Pope Leo the 14th. The choice of Leo the 14th. Everyone looks to that name to try to figure out what kind of message the Pope is trying to send from the very start. And what do you make of it?
Historically, it's a name that would signal his alignment with workers, labor, and the poor.
And that's going to be his outreach from the very beginning.
Certainly that's his intention. I mean, he can expand that, but it's a real solid sign that that's the way he wants to be identified at the beginning.
We met this husband.
Now, that is the first time we see Father James Martin, who is editor-at-large of the American Jesuit Review, which I explained in this new book, Volume 12, My Confessions. This is the main propaganda tool of the Jesuits here in the United States. They're the ones who have launched Alexander Ocasio-Cortez. They're the ones who, of course, promote everything that is anti-Trump, anti-MAGA, pro-immigration, open borders, transgenderism, climate change. Remember that in this book, I also explained the history of the climate change lie from the end of the 60s with Padre Pedro Arrupe, the creation of the eco-Jesuits. Now, let me show you how James Martin yesterday was joined in his David Muir appearance, this time by another priest who is himself a Opus Dei member and a professor at the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross in Rome. I'm talking about John Wauch. So John Wauch represents the Opus Dei. James Martin represents, of course, the Jesuits. He's the Jesuit supervisor of the new Pope. And I'm going to show you now how they dropped in another time during this let's say that David Muir now it's in Rome for the last few days, just like Lester Holt. We will also see how they participated to this conference of cardinals, American cardinals, where some interesting things were said, but we will leave that for later. This was yesterday.
Tonight, breaking news from the Vatican. For the first time, we hear from cardinals who were inside the conclave. What was it? Why did they choose the first American Pope?
Why they choose the first American Pope? Because it was decided by the Jesuits. Why? I mean,
It's kind of obvious.
It's pretty obvious, but
so a lot of people don't see the obvious. They think it's some kind of an American first thing. I don't know if that's a psyop or what. I mean, if these... Now,
let's watch these two. Opus Dei member and the Jesuit James Martin talking about, of course, the new Pope and also where he's going to stay, because there has been a lot of talk about, is he going to stay in Santa Marta? Is he going to go to the papal room?
Grand papal apartment at the Apostolic Palace. Father John Wauch and Father James Martin on the decision he'll have to make. Do you think he stays there, or does he move into the Grand Papal Apartment?
I think he moves into the Grand Papal Apartments. I think I visited Pope Francis at Casa Santa Marta. It was very simple, and he liked that. He liked being around people, but I don't know if I would want to live in a guest house for 20 years. I think I'd like something a little more permanent. So I would forgive him completely.
So that's it, 20 years. First of all, he already knows that this Pope is going to last a lot. I mean, like I said to Alex Jones the other day, I don't know if you saw me, I was immediately after the election of Pope Leo XIV on InfoWars, and I also did a special appearance with the phone calls of the Catholic InfoWarriors, worried about the election of this new Pope. I was the first one to denounce the reality of this Pope as the great protectors of pedophiles. Today we're going to also go and listen to the actual testimonies of women who were violated when they were children by priests in the dioceses of Bishop Prevost in Peru. We know that he also protected pedophiles back in Chicago. He has a history of protecting pedophiles. This new Pope, Robert Francis Prevost. It's quite incredible because, you know, my name is Leo. My second name is Robert. I feel like I'm cursed with this new Pope. Or maybe I'm blessed because I'm here trying to fight this guy. Now, check out here what these two people are saying.
I suspect he'll be moving back, and partly it's because the truth is that having the Pope living with you is very awkward for the people who have to be there.
And the
all
residents.
sorts of security.
Born in 1955.
Oh, born in 1955, like Father James Martin said. For those who don't know who Father James Martin said, because of course not everybody has read my book, I just want to tell them that this is the guy who has founded Outreach. Outreach is, of course, the LGBT Catholic resource.
So much for a conservative.
He's not a
Pope.
conservative. Well, he's not a conservative Pope. Anybody who says that is a liar. This Pope is, of course, anything but conservative. James Martin has been working for him behind the scenes for a number of years, and I have the evidence of it in even a photo that was posted by the same James Martin a few hours after, actually 1 hour after the Pope was elected. On his Twitter account, James Martin posted this very important photo, which shows, of course, what they have been doing behind the scenes. This is the future Pope Leo. This is, of course, Father James Martin, the Jesuit supervisor of the future Pope. He posted this photo on his Twitter account. Let me see if I have it here to show you. It's not this one. Let me see, here it is, in which he says himself, our synod table last year. So I'm showing you the evidence rather than just speculating. If you want to know more about how the Jesuits have rigged the Catholic Church, you need to get the bestseller, Confessions of an Illuminati, Volume 12, Secrets of the Jesuits. They are all here in this history, secret societies and the politics of the Jesuit New World Order and the Luciferian court. As you can see, Christy, what does it say there?
Our synod table from last year, including on the far right, the modest, reserved, and highly intelligent man now known as Pope Leo XIV.
Remember, guys, this is his Jesuit controller. In fact, for years he's been promoting him behind the scenes. And there is a post that James Martin made of an article on American Magazine, which is the official Jesuit review, the official Jesuit magazine here in the United States from 2023. What is it saying here, Christy?
News. A U.S. Augustinian, former head of the Augustinian order, and a bishop with extensive experience in Latin America, appointed to an important role in the church.
Pope Francis tapped Chicago-born bishop to lead the Vatican department that evaluates new bishops. That was when he was brought to Rome. He will be nominated cardinal. This year he was then nominated Cardinal Bishop, so even further into a possibility of becoming a papal subject. During the conclave, Cardinal Tagle didn't manage to get enough votes because there was some opposition to a cardinal openly aligned and working with the Chinese Communist Party, but rather they prefer a cardinal who was both supported by the World Economic Forum like Turkson and the Chinese Communist Party, because you will see Pope Leo will not do any changes to the Vatican-China deal, that's for sure. So now we have understood in the first 20 minutes of a broadcast who is controlling the Pope. I've actually shown you James Martin. I've also shown you how he has the support also of the Opus Dei, which is another very important element in today's Catholic Church, known as, Licio Gelli used to call it the Freemasonry of the Church. And of course, we know there is the full support of the Democratic Party, of people like Barack Hussein Obama and the wife Michelle, who have immediately tweeted in support of this Pope. This, of course, is obvious. I mean, it's obvious that Barack Obama supports somebody who comes out of Chicago, who has the same values, who has been fighting against Donald J. Trump on Twitter for years. So please read, Christy.
Michelle and I send our congratulations to a fellow Chicagoan. Chicagoan. His Holiness Pope Leo XIV. This is a historic day for the United States, and we will pray for him as he begins the sacred work of leading the Catholic Church and setting an example for many regardless of faith.
So regardless of faith, because remember, this Pope is an Augustinian. Martin Luther was an Augustinian. And Martin Luther was the reason, together with the Anglican Church in England, that the Jesuits came into existence and became the intelligent force of the Vatican as the main order for the Counter-Reformation. Now, to bring back everybody under the same church, after all this time, they chose another Augustinian, this time, of course, Robert Francis Prevost. But Robert Francis Prevost has a lot of skeletons in the closet. And these skeletons in the closet, they are pretty big. So what happened in the last few hours in Rome is pretty epic, because there is an organization which has fought for many years. It's the Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests. It's an organization which has been able to do a lot of things, but of course, they have been ostracized by the popes, starting from Ratzinger, who didn't really want to do much. Then, of course, Francis was forced to do a little bit more, but he still didn't do much. In fact, in my book, I say Robert Sosa, the Jesuit general, immediately after the death of Pope Francis, said that, oh, well, Pope Francis wanted to do something, but he didn't manage. Well, what do you mean he didn't manage? He was there for 12 years and he didn't do anything. Now, the director of this organization, who is himself a victim, went on that leftist outlet known as Democracy Now! And ended up having even an argument with the journalist from the Catholic News Agency, but he himself is a leftist. Remember, guys, what I'm about to show you is a leftist outlet in which they have to admit that even if they like what Leo stands for and they dislike the MAGA policies and Donald J. Trump, they have to admit that Prevost has been covering up for pedophilia. And this is really a great contradiction in terms that already we haven't even started yet. And already we have some really big contradictions and people fighting live on the air. I repeat, Democracy Now! Is a leftist outlet. And it's a leftist outlet that, of course, we will never encourage you to view in any way, shape, or form with a typical gray hair leftist witch. But what happens during this show is very relevant. So check it out.
Depends on a free press. Please support our independent journalism at democracynow.org/give. I want to bring our next guest into this conversation. He's back in Rome, Italy, Peter Isley. He is a survivor of sexual assault by a Catholic priest as a 13-year-old boy growing up in Wisconsin. Peter's one of the founders and global affairs chief of SNAP, Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests. SNAP's open letter in response to the new Pope, quote, highlights the grim reality underpinning the College of Cardinals. Many who voted in this conclave actively shielded abusers, and many who will be appointed to the curia under this papacy bear similar stains, they write. Peter Isley, can you talk about your organization's very grave concerns about Cardinal Prevost being elected a pope?
Yeah, and you can imagine how difficult this is for me to be sitting here for survivors to what they're experiencing today, especially when survivors from Peru and some of the United States who were raped and sexually assaulted by Augustinians, the order that Prevost was provincial of, and then global, ahead of the global order, what it felt like to see him walk out on that balcony knowing that your family, your life has permanently changed because of how he has managed or mismanaged sexual abuse. cases. It's hard not to be a part of the Leo fan club right now. I'm pretty confident I'm the most unpopular person, probably in Rome right now, and certainly on this panel. But here are the facts, and this is why we were in Rome launching Conclave Watch. People need to know what the records on sexual abuse and cover-up are of these cardinals. And we filed a Vos Estis complaint. That's the official mechanism that you're supposed to use when a bishop has evidence of covering up sex crimes. And in that filing, there is plenty of evidence. Now, I'm not saying he's guilty, but we're saying it reaches well beyond probable cause that he covered up sex crimes as Augustinian provincial and as head of the Augustinian order, and then as a bishop in Peru from 2014 to 2023. And the worst is a case that he was directly involved in. 3 sisters who were sexually assaulted and raped by 2 priests in his diocese. They were like 6 and 7 years old. The statute of limitations in Peru for child sex crimes is 4 years. So they didn't go to the police by, they 9 years old, they didn't go to the police. But they did it, and one of them admitted it. He admitted to the church that he committed these heinous, awful crimes against these girls. And what Prevost did with that information is that he didn't launch it and give it to justice officials, say in Peru, to find out if there's any possibility of prosecution. He took that criminal evidence, like they do all around the world, and he shipped it via diplomatic pouch over here to the Vatican over here. What are they doing with it? And that case was closed because of the civil statute in Peru. The man has sexually assaulted children. They were left in ministry. These victims had to go public. Imagine the courage of these 3 women. They didn't get to read the gospel today or whatever what happened over there, but these 3 women raped and sexually assaulted by 2 Peruvian priests. Prevost, I'm sorry. I hate saying this. The evidence is that he covered up these crimes.
Peter, I wanted to go to a clip. I wanted to go to a clip, by the way. This recent scrutiny centering around Cardinal Robert Provost's alleged awareness and mishandling of accusations of sexual abuse against 2 priests when Provost, now the Pope, was the Archbishop, as you described, in Peru. This is a clip of Ana Maria Quispe, a Peruvian woman who you were talking about, who accused the 2 priests, Eleuterio Vázquez and Ricardo Yasken, of sexual abuse. In an interview with the Peruvian media in 2023, she said the abuse started when she was 9 years old.
Lo que me pasó a mí fue alrededor del 2007. Yo en ese entonces.
What happened to me was around 2007. At the time, the priest would invite us to celebrations, to go on missions, to pray the rosary with him, or to Mass. He would insist on having youth go on missions with him, to rural regions in the mountains. After so much insistence, my parents agreed because the priest and I were really close. When it was time to go to bed, he ended up sleeping with me. It was something I didn't expect, and it was very uncomfortable. In regards to Father Ricardo Yasken, I attended a youth missionary group with him. I was standing in line to greet him when he kissed me. He sat me on top of his legs and he kissed me.
So there is the clip of Ana Maria Quispe, the Peruvian woman accusing 2 priests of sexual abuse. If you can talk further, Peter, as you sit there in Rome, what your demands are at this point, and if you've ever spoken to the current Pope, to Pope Leo XIV.
No, I've never spoken to him. I don't know if any survivor has spoken to him. He hasn't tweeted anything from survivors, as far as I know. I mean, here's what we wanted from him. Here's what he needs to do. 1, he needs to pass, not a policy, a law, a canon law. That's what governs the Catholic Church. A zero-tolerance law. And what that means is simple. Any cleric, any priest, known, determined, like these priests were known and determined to have committed acts of sexual abuse, violence, rape, assault against a child, will be permanently removed from the Catholic priesthood. He can no longer be a priest. He can't function as a priest. He can't represent himself as a priest. That zero tolerance right now around the world, you can be a bishop, you can have priests, and they know of these priests who have raped and sexually assaulted children, and you can stay in the ministry, you can transfer them to new assignments, and that's perfectly legal under this church law. Secondly, he needs to tell us how he has handled these cases. There needs to be an independent body, not hired by the church, not hired by him, that's going to look into the abuse archives that he's involved with. So when he was Augustinian Provincial, when he was head of the Augustinian Order, right now we're in the Augustinian headquarters. Those files might be right here. They might be like three floors down from me. Those need to be reviewed. What cases did he handle? Because every case of an Augustinian during that time of rape and sexual assault, and there were cases, went to him, he was responsible for. And in Peru, all that time in Peru, every case in his diocese, he was responsible for. That needs to be examined. He needs to be transparent. He needs to be honest. Let's open the archives and see what he's done. Even with the case, by the way, this victim, her other two sisters then came forward with her. It's not just her, it's just her and her two sisters, for God's sake. Let's see the report he sent to Rome that has led to the closing of this case. And then finally, the last job he had was head of the Dicastery of Bishops. All the reports of bishops that have covered up sex crimes, guess where they're supposed to go? Guess where Vos Estes is supposed to be instituted? Over there with him. So he knows of all any reports of bishops that have covered up sex crimes or cardinals. Those files are over there. So he needs to open up those archives because, believe me, we want to trust him. Right now, there is no indication when it comes to this that he can be trusted. I am the last person that wants to say this. Do you know how difficult this
look what he says now, because he's a leftist, so look what he says now.
Is for me to say, with all the praise and adulation and glory, I agree with many of the positions that the other two guests talked about. I agree with that. But just because I criticize Pope Leo, and just because we had the same problem with Francis covering up sex crimes, that does not make us J.D. Vance. That doesn't make us conservatives because, oh God, we're criticizing Pope Leo. And
I'm sorry. Ooh. And in the same broadcast, then, like, it's always controlled by the Jesuits. So Democracy Now! Brings another old acquaintance of ours who is, of course, very much in the outreach and the LGBTQ and all this kind of business. But check out what happens now.
Worked up about this, but it is extraordinarily difficult to be in these conversations right now.
Can I respond, Amy?
Yes. James Grimaldi, executive editor of National Catholic Reporter, who's sitting next to Peter Isley in the studio in Rome. If you could respond.
Yeah. First, I want to say that there is no media organization.
Now, this guy claims that he has done a lot to expose pedophilia, but then he gets in a clash with the guy from Snap, and then both of them, eventually the savior comes in, and he's of course a guy from Fordham, from the Jesuit University, who is a black priest who's been very outspoken and very flamboyant about the support for the LGBT and everything else. So, I mean, we are talking, guys, about a big problem here, pedophilia, and unfortunately, the LGBTQ gets into the P and it gets into the pedophilia. That is the reality of it. It doesn't always happen, but unfortunately, a lot of homosexuals tend to condone pedophilia, and we have zero tolerance on this show. Remember that.
That has done more to expose sexual abuse by priests than the National Catholic Reporter. That's number one. We gave our database of abusers to SNAP and Bishop Accountability. That's why they have a database. So I just wanted to make that point. Second, I'm from Missouri, Amy. You got to show me. And I think Peter's a nice man, like Peter a lot, but he's conflated a number of things.
And now this guy is starting to criticize the SNAP director, In the meantime, somebody in the chat says, Leo, but it's the same that happened with Ratzinger. Guys, we are in the year 2025, and these Catholics think that with Leo the 14th, we're going to have something different. So let them clarify from the start that if they all read volume 12 of my Confessions, which at the moment is a bestseller, they will know there will be no change. They will already know the fate of the church. That's why this book is number one, and you need to purchase it now. History, secret societies, and the politics of the Jesuit New World Order and the Luciferian court made of Freemasons, think tanks, Illuminati. People always told me, who controls the Freemasons? Who controls the Illuminati? Well, finally, you have the answer with volume 12. And it's not a conspirational answer. It's an answer based on fact. This book has 5 stars, has not been debunked, and is number one in its history of religions, essays, historic essays. Is a book you need to purchase now.
That he's talking about are horrific. They're awful. Those priests should be banished from the Catholic Church. We agree on that. No question whatsoever. The question that I don't have, the evidence that I don't have, and when I met Peter the other night, I asked him to send it to me. And in fact, I emailed him the next day and I said, give me that evidence on Prevost, because he was on our short list. We thought he could become the next pope, and I didn't get a reply. Now, he's here in Rome. I didn't have his card. I sent it through their website, so it could be that for whatever happened, and a million things going on, and I'm running a team of 7 people, but I'm still eager to see the evidence, because you got to show me that his fingerprints are on a cover-up, and we don't have that. Third, I agree with a lot of that he just said, and we don't know if Pope Leo is going to agree or not. I hope he does, because I am a lifelong, as you know, Amy, after having exposed Jack Abramoff, the corrupt lobbyist, I'm all in favor of transparency and openness. And Francis made some steps in that direction. Did he go far enough? No. Could Pope Leo go further? Yes. Could, you know, I'm with Peter. Let's go downstairs and look through the archives. I love archives. If those archives are here, they should open them up. I want to see exactly what happened. So all of the things he's talking about, and the canon law change, which he mentioned to me the other night, I think this is a great idea. We have no evidence yet that he isn't going to do that. And I agree with our priest friend that we had on a minute ago. You know, something he said 13 years ago, how do we know it hasn't changed? I mean, people's minds change. As you know, Amy, as you know very well, Amy Coney Barrett allegedly told Senator Susan Collins she would not overturn Roe v. Wade because she believed in stare decisis. How did that work out? Well, people changed their minds, and we don't know what's going to happen with Pope Leo. So I would say wait and see. Don't listen to what they say. Watch what they do.
So I'm going to give you right there, Peter, the last 30 seconds, and then to Father Brian Massengale for a final comment here. But what I want to do is have the two of you back on as you review the evidence, because this is obviously an ongoing conversation, Peter.
Did you hear the victim talking? They did an open letter. Do you know what guts it took to put their names on a letter that they released to the public with their names on it? They're the ones that said they went to Prevost. Let's see the report Prevost sent. I am talking and believing the victims. Their accounts are completely consistent.
I believe the victims too.
Please let me finish, sir, okay? And you never sent me the email.
Here it starts, you know, the controversy. What do you think about it?
I think it's hideous.
I mean,
I think it's every person that has God should always want to protect the children, and you know, it's just a shame that it has to be like this.
And it's a shame that then they actually don't even manage to support the survivors of these abuses. And that the guy says, oh, we are the #1 Catholic news agency in exposing the whole thing, but you haven't given me the evidence of this and that. Because
I mean, just for them to come out, like the guys, like the other guys said, you know, just for them to come out and do it against the church is very, very takes a lot of courage to do that.
Absolutely.
And a lot of
absolutely.
times it's in these small countries where the church is really, really big.
Powerful.
Yeah,
powerful,
it's
like
very
in Peru.
powerful.
I mean, you're talking very powerful. You're gonna end up dead if you go against the church in those kind of
Yeah,
countries.
it's like a mafia there.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
So let's continue and see what happened here.
Okay, fine. Okay, let me finish, please. And the thing is, please respect the fact, whether you disagree with me or not, that I am a survivor of rape and sexual assault by a priest in the Catholic Church. And what I'm thinking about is that young lady in Peru and her sisters and what they are going through right now, seeing the praise and adulation of this man. He covered up those crimes in Peru. There's plenty of evidence for an investigation. He did it in Chicago. And this is court records. He put 2 priests in residences, one next to a high school, pedophile priest, one next to an elementary school, pedophile priest. He didn't even tell the parents of those children or the principal of that school, I've got a pedophile priest like 1,000 feet away from your school, okay? Didn't do any of that. So that's not the care of children. I'll tell you finally, he was out on that balcony. Did you hear one word to victims of sexual crimes and violence in the Catholic Church? All about peace. Peace is about ending violence. And so the violence he can end. I don't know what he can do about the Ukraine and anything else, but he can end the sexual violence in the church. Pass that zero tolerance now law. He knows what it is. It's been drafted. Pass it, and let's see the archives. There's plenty of evidence. Maybe you can ask him. I mean, you seem to be good friends with him. Let's go get those archives.
I've never met him. I want to see your evidence, Jay Grimaldi.
I've said it. Go up. Go to.
I'm going to give you my email, Peter.
You said you did that before. Go to.
I mean, the guy. Sorry, but the guy with the glasses looks like a fruitcake. Can I say that?
No.
No. Well, I say it. Sorry.
At ncronline.org.
Okay, great.
We're going to have to leave it there, but we're going to
Okay, let's.
We're going to have to leave it there, but we're going to continue this conversation because it's clearly an absolutely critical one. I want to thank Peter Isley, as the two of you also.
At this point, the Jesuit agent comes in to save the day, the Jesuit media agent.
Pat each other on the back there. You're clearly both interested in the investigation of this and getting to the bottom of it. Peter Isley is the survivor of sexual assault by a Catholic priest when he was growing up in Wisconsin, and the founder, one of the founders of SNAP, the Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests. And I also want to thank James Grimaldi, executive editor of the National Catholic Reporter. We have a date to put the two of you back on the show, but I want to get a final comment from our guest here in New York.
Here in New York, and this is a guy, an old acquaintance I've been talking about because he has been involved in a movie about coming out in the sense of coming out. And in a moment, I'm going to show you who he is.
You may not be in Rome, but you have a lot to say about this as we look at the future of the new Pope, Reverend Brian Massingale. What do you want to see?
I guess I want to see a couple of things. I want the Pope to be a voice for the voiceless. What we see around the world and in our own.
What I don't understand is why, in the end, there has to be another James Martin, Jesuit agent from Fordham, who is a member, of course, of Outreach, to come and save the day after we are talking about the terrible crime of pedophilia, which happens because the church, like I explained in this book, in the 1960s, let a bunch of, okay, let me not be so rude, but of course, homosexuals take over the church, and that's what happened. And then, of course, of those 80% of homosexuals that in the church today, a large part also practices pedophilia. And so when I see this guy, this is Father Brian Massingale. This is a guy I know very well. This is a guy who talks about coming out, and he does. So why having this kind of guest? Can't you just have a conservative Catholic priest talking about in a conservative way? No, you have to have Father Brian Massingale on coming out and finding himself among God's beloved creation. I don't dismiss that gays or anybody that practices other forms of sexuality are creatures of God.
No, but you're supposed to be married to God.
Well, of course, these people are supposed to marry for God. And this guy participated to a documentary. He's a professor at Fordham, by the way, for those who don't know. And I discuss Fordham in my latest book extensively, and also the secret societies in Fordham who tried to corrupt Donald J. Trump without managing. In an article I published in January 2021, I talked about him because 1 year after the gay Jesus blasphemy on Netflix, the LGBTQ Catholic community are back with another heresy on film, wonderfully made, which sees the participation of this guy here that you have just seen, this priest here, and of course, superstar James Martin, the handler of the new Pope, and Father Brian Massinger. So the problem with people like Snap is that they don't understand that they get played in this narrative of the left that in the end saves the day with this guy.
Country is rising intolerance. The scapegoating of the migrant and the immigrant. We are seeing the erasure of trans people from our public lives. We're seeing the revision of our histories. We're trying to edit Harriet Tubman out of the Underground Railroad.
So you understand, Chrissy, this becomes a political thing.
Oh, it shouldn't. It shouldn't.
And it becomes a political thing, of course, the race of the new Pope. Now, everybody said, oh, Leo, you didn't get it right. It wasn't an Asian Pope. It wasn't a Black Pope. Oh, well,
when they first announced the American Pope, it was so confusing because it was like American and his name was Leo. And it wasn't like who you said. And then I asked him, I said, but I thought that it was either going to be a Black Pope or an Asian. And because of everything, And then, like, in that moment, I'm like, oh, my God. When you started to tell me, like, about him and who he was, because I didn't know who he was, And then he started to tell me, I was like, he's worse than Francis.
And
he's
guys...
worse.
His grandparents come from a long line of voodoo priests.
Fascinating. Records show that Pope Leo also has Black family roots in New Orleans. ABC News uncovered U.S. Census records from the early 1900s that shows the first American Pope's family tree. Both of his maternal grandparents identified themselves as Black or mulatto in several census documents. His two aunts also identified as Black. On their marriage license, his grandfather listed his birthplace as Haiti. However, his birth records show he was born in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic. The birth records of the Pope's grandmother show she was born in New Orleans. However, in 1920, after the family migrated to Chicago, they marked down their race as white. It appears like so many families fleeing the South at that time, they shifted their racial identity. So many people talking about this online. I mean, it's just fascinating to see his lineage.
Absolutely, and very interesting in terms of his role as, a bridge builder between cultures.
A bridge builder, but let's go in volume 8 of my Confessions, which underlines the connections between Haiti, Santo Domingo, and of course Freemasonry and Aleister Crowley.
The importance of voodoo for Crowley is evident in his pseudo-sacred text, the Book of the Law. Also, the mantras and spells, the Obeah and Wanga, the work of the wand and the work of the sword, these he shall learn and teach.
This is a citation from Crowley's infamous Book of the Law, which cites the importance of Obeah. Obeah is an animist religion and a part of voodoo.
It's popular among the populations of African origin present in the Caribbean islands. It comes from the regions traditionally inhabited by the Igbo people, especially with reference to Nigeria of West Africa, and has a very close link with the African American tradition of voodoo practiced in the United States. Awanga, sometimes written Oanga or Wanger, is a classic package of magical penance which we still find in use today in Haitian magical animist practices. and as such is connected to the Vodun religion of West Africa, which in turn derives from the Fon and U, two peoples who live in what is now Benin, the Togolese Republic in the southeast of Ghana. The word voodoo in their language literally means spirit, which in Louisiana...
One of you out there might just be...
While in Haiti, it is written voodoo, voodoo like V-O-D-O-U. In Cuba, V-O-D-U with an accent, and in the Dominican Republic, V-U-D-U, voodoo. The most important of its intermediary divinities between God and men are called Iowa, I-O-A. Is that right? Loa? Loa? Is
Loa,
that right?
Loas. The
So
Loas are the spirits in the voodoo tradition.
the serpent god mentioned by, how do you say? La Bruyere.
La Bruyere.
Yeah. Also venerated in Dutch Guana's surname, according to the Italian Encyclopedia of Sciences, Letters, and Arts. In a broad sense, it indicates each of the gods of spirit or spirits of African origin worshipped in voodooism. There is also the hoodoo spiritual esoteric system.
And let's not forget that the hoodoo is specifically hoodoo.
There's hoodoo, there's voodoo.
Yes, no, let's make it
There's a lot.
specific. Voodoo is New Orleans, and then there is the hoodoo, which is the beliefs that come together in Louisiana. And this is what you're watching now. This is the marriage certificate in New Orleans of two people, the grandparents of the present Pope. One of them born in Haiti, the other one in New Orleans. And if you know the story of voodoo and how it arrived in New Orleans, of course, it arrived through the diaspora in Haiti. But please read.
Okay. There is also the hoodoo spiritual esoteric system, which develops thanks to the African American communities throughout the United States, becoming a sort of synchronistic religion, which mixes voodoo elements with those of other religions.
And this is what the family of the Pope was practicing.
Such as Christianity, Islam, and Judaism.
Now, if in these documents you go in, you see that at one point, when they moved from New Orleans to Chicago, they changed they identify as black and then they identify as white. Why is that? Because, of course, they wanted, and also one of their grandparents born in Haiti changes and says he was born in New Orleans. And that's because they wanted to cover up for their Haitian origins, because, of course, there was a lot of people who, when they heard, they might hear that you were a Creole connected to Haiti, that would be quite a negative connotation at their arrival in Chicago in the 1920s, so they changed.
Okay, I was reading that throughout the United States, it became a sort of synchronistic religion, which mixes Vodun elements with those of other religions such as Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, even considering Moses as one of its precursors. After the publication in 1939 by Zora Neale Hurston, Moses, Man of the Mountain, in which Moses is called the finest voodoo man in the world. The close link between Freemasonry and Haitian voodoo also must be considered. The French rule of the island of Hispaniola.
Let's not forget, they come from the family Prevost comes from there.
Founded the colony of Saint Domingo.
That is where actually the family of the new Pope comes from.
From 1959 to 1804, and what we know today as Haiti. Freemasonry was officially established in the colony when two lodges were founded in 1749. In 1778, a provincial Grand Lodge was also established under the direction of the Grand Orient of France.
Please read a bit louder.
Initially, slaves were forbidden to enter the Masonic lodges because they had to be form free, a fact that subsequently led to the birth of Prince Hall Freemasonry in the barely United States of America in 1784.
And here, in regards to the connection with Freemasonry and the actual birth of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, please read this paragraph.
In the same period, Stephen Moran, considered today by most Freemasonry historians and Freemasons as the founder of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite in America, also founded several Scottish lodges in San Domingo as well as Martinez de Pasquale.
Yeah, who was the founder of the Louis de Cohen. Now, if you want to know more, of course, go on Confessions of an Illuminati, Volume 8. It's a big book, but it has a lot of knowledge in it. But as I explain also in this book, then there is the connection with the Jesuits. You see, the connection here is between French Freemasonry, which was Jacobite, was supporting the Catholic cause, the island of Haiti, which was still a French colony until their independence. The moment in which the independence happened, the people who were closer to the French, like his family, had to flee and go to New Orleans. That's how voodoo became then Louisiana voodoo. So this is really, I mean, his story is really immersed in the history of Louisiana voodoo, because Louisiana voodoo, also known as New Orleans voodoo, is part of that African diasporic religion, and it is part of the moment in which aside from, of course, being a French, it was sold by the French after to America, the whole state, and that's the symbol. Let's go and see the emblem of this Pope, Christy, because it's actually all there in the emblem of this Pope. People, they when they see the emblem of a pope, they don't really analyze it, but we want to analyze it here. As you know, Leo Zagami is an expert on symbolism, and so here we have the fior-d'Ali, and the fior-d'Ali is connected to France, is connected to the Medici queen from Florence, and then so it has a Florence connection. It's connected to, in fact, the Priory of Zion, and it's connected to as a symbol of New Orleans, the fior-d'Ali. So we have the Haitian Revolution in the early 19th century. Many migrants, like the family of this Pope, fleeing the Haitian Revolution, arrived in Louisiana, bringing with them Haitian voodoo, which contributed to the formation of Louisiana voodoo, practiced primarily by Black people like the family of the present Pope, with some involvement. Voodoo spread up to the Mississippi River and the whole of Missouri. And then you have another symbol, though, which I have discussed in volume 4 of my Confessions. This is another symbol of great importance.
Sacred Heart?
The Sacred Heart, yes. I actually discussed it in volume 4. I don't know if I have volume 4 somewhere here. I need to find volume 4. Let me see if I can find it without having, creating too much of a mess. Here it is. Okay, guys. Volume 4, for those who have volume 4, this is very important because it connects also, remember guys, this is the Pachamama Pope. This is a Pope who has also an identity in Peru, a place of worship for Pachamama, which I discussed here. And I discussed also Pachamama here, the Pachamama and the ones that were removed in the church of Santa Maria in Traspontina during the middle of the pandemic, and then they went to recover them. But so here I explain the connection with Atlantis, with Peru, and in fact, the symbol of the Freemasons here, I cite my own book here. This led to popular Catholic cult of the Sacred Heart to papal approval, and eventually to such monuments at the Sacred Core Basilica in Montmartre. Montmartre is the place, as explained, where the Jesuits were founded in 1534. They gathered for the first time. And here it says, the Sacred Heart symbol used in secret by Catholic Freemason linked to the Jesuits. This is written by me in volume 4 of my Confessions, and is the symbol of the present Pope. And I'm going to make you read an explanation about this important symbol. But of course, here it is. So this is part of the emblem of the new Pope. So please, Christy, can you read here the image associated with the heart and what it represents here?
Finally, the image of fire associated with the heart represents Christ's passionate love for us. One 19th century French devotional card has these words arched above the Sacred Heart. Voila, your French is better.
Okay, here, You mean voilà or secours qui attend Aim
It's
Léon.
not that great.
Voilà secours qui attend Aim Léon, which means here is the heart that loved men so much. Now, the arrow, which instead symbolizes also, this is all about the Sacred Heart that constitutes the climax of divine self-revelation, showing us the depths of God's love for us in their interpretation. Please read this paragraph here.
One traditional account offers this interpretation, describing those who are devoted to it. They saw the crown transferred from his head to his heart. They felt that its sharp points had always pierced theirs. They understood that the passion was crucifixion of a heart, the heart of the gospel.
So this is the traditional religious interpretation, but of course then you have the more Jesuit New Age interpretation. And of course here I talk about this symbol in connection with the agents of the Jesuits like Paul Lecour, which he wrote this important book on Atlantis. Paul Lecour, here he is, and Paul Lecour is very important because he was a Jesuit agent, and in fact, I say here about him as a Jesuit agent, Lecour, please read. Sorry if my French wasn't so perfect, Christy said.
I don't speak French at all.
I studied French, but then sometimes I get it. I have to just get into the, into the feeling. Voila!
S'il vous plaît. S'il vous plaît.
Okay.
Ménage à trois. No, sorry.
What do you mean ménage à trois?
It was the 70s. It was this. No, it was a song, okay? Voulez-vous?
Voulez-vous danser avec moi ce soir?
It was a song, okay?
That was a favorite of Donald J. Trump and David. Okay. You like that song? Let me just say.
Okay, all right. I didn't know. Lecour, like most Jesuit agents of his time, went on to become another precursor to the New Age movement, and his groundbreaking work from 1937 entitled The Age of Aquarius. But is it the Age of Aquarius or the Age of the Antichrist? Given the end times rise of the New Age plague of the spirit and how it feeds into the plans of the Antichrist, New Age leaders and channeled demon spirits are indeed laying out the basic agenda for a glowingly golden age of Aquarius. Peace, love, and brotherhood are its mottos that cunningly conceal the devouring face of darkness that is behind it all. Sadly, the people who are swept up in the Antichrist's powerful delusion will have little to no idea of the neo-Holocaust that they are helping to perpetuate. Okay, I don't know.
This is your mother language. It's not mine.
Okay. Perpetrate. Wait, I don't know about that word.
Okay.
Just as most New Agers today would scoff at these ideas, they are blinded to the fact that Satan is the author of this movement, serving his purposes alone and preparing the way for the false Messiah.
Okay, in the meantime, guys, of course, finally things are coming out just as I predicted, with a pope that has been chosen to contrast Trump, and this has been admitted also by CNN today.
Okay, there's the results so far. 35,929. Was the election of Pope Leo XIV, an American, a deliberate choice meant to contrast with President Donald Trump? Okay, the yes votes, 62%. I'm in that category. It is so rare that I'm in the majority of any of my poll questions, particularly on Saturdays when
But they made even a poll, CNN, to ask the question if this Pope was elected to stand to Trump, which is what I said from the very beginning. Guys, those lucky enough to have followed my work know very well that I stand for truth and accuracy. A lot of people were like disappointed because they said, Leo, you said he was a black Pope. Well, now it seems it wasn't so white after all, and that
looks are deceiving.
Looks might be deceiving, and at the same time, the guy behind him, of course, it's Barack Hussein Obama, who is rather black himself, candidate to the office of Antichrist. And then we have, of course, the people who are supporting this papacy. I mean, I really don't understand those Americans who think even for a second that J.D. Vance and Trump had anything, to do with the election.
That's what I wanted to comment on.
Yes.
You didn't let me comment
Please,
earlier.
please.
Because I saw a lot of Catholics that were really confused. You know, they were interviewing people in Vatican Square. Maybe they didn't know about him yet. Maybe they're learning more about him.
Kind of
but it's not America first. And it's not like
the Americans that are that go abroad are at times really a bunch of leftists. In particular, the guys from the John Cabot University in Rome. They are the most leftist. Check them out. Check what they say.
So I'm excited, but yeah, he seems like a really nice guy. Don't know too much yet, but I'm sure we'll all kind of start to unveil. But it's exciting to have someone from the States.
Secondo me sarà molto simile come Papa Francesco.
Tu chi ti favi da italo-americano?
Forse uno italiano, però.
So this guy speaks Italian, and of course we're gonna jump in, but check out this.
Something interesting, especially to be in Rome as an American, to see this live. It's definitely.
In St. Peter's Square.
I was for it. It was insane.
I was a little bit nervous because I heard about a lot.
In my book, I explain how the educational system is in the hands of the Jesuits, and how all this progressive agenda that is filtered through the university, including this John Cabot University in Rome, which is an American university in Rome, is all filtered by the Jesuits in their leftist agenda. And so listen to what they're saying here.
Of their views. So my first thought was to Google him, see who his, like the saint he chose the name of was, and what his general views and political views were. But he seems to be quite nice so far. Okay. I'm hopeful.
It seems to be politically different from Trump.
Yes. I think
and that's good.
Yes.
I'm not religious, but so blanket statement. But from my perspective, he does not seem to be furthering Donald Trump's either agenda or quest for power or whatever.
Yeah, these are the idiot communist leftists that we have in the universities, especially when they go abroad. These are the American idiots that unfortunately push for the leftist agenda.
We panicked at first because we know about Americans, but
so you were afraid it was.
Yes, we were very afraid. But like she said, we went home and we started Googling and researching and finding more about him and his views, and we're feeling a lot better.
They're feeling a lot better. Now finally they have a leftist pope. So this Pope has been elected in order to wage war on Donald J. Trump. This is what I said.
If this was a chess game, okay, so, you know, like we're playing chess here, and Donald Trump won, you know, this his battle there when he won that match. But then they, you know, while we were paying attention to, you know, something else, like then they put in this.
Well, I never paid attention to something else because I've been saying for a long time that the successor of Pope Francis will inevitably be a leftist Jesuit agent, and that's what happened, no?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Exactly what
but
happened.
they've been planning this. Like this was the big plan of theirs. Like this was the big plan. I was always wondering, like, okay, they're so sneaky. Why are they conceding right now so like quickly? Like you saw all of the media, like, oh well, we're sorry and we were wrong and Biden was this and that.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden Biden is not senile anymore. There's this Pope in there that's gonna it's just really like it was the big game. This was a chess game. They took Rome. What do they say? All these roads lead to Rome. So they took this guy and they put him in the head of everything. It's bigger than the president.
And guys,
it's bigger than the president.
Mean, this was a guy who nobody knew. In fact, Cardinal Dolan admitted himself that nobody in the American Bishop Conference knew about this guy because he had been moved around and about out of the United States with Peru, especially after what happened at a certain point with this cover-up of this pedophilia guy in Chicago as an Augustinian. But then the Vatican, of course, and the Jesuits have their stronghold in South America. So obviously, if you are in Peru, in the home of the Pachamama, there with this, and you are with the dual citizenship. I mean, the fact that Dolan didn't know who this guy was means that the Jesuit prepared him. And I mean, in a way that nobody, even the American cardinals, could be prepared for what was coming. In fact, this is admitted by Dolan. Watch.
So one of the cardinals who voted in the historic election of Pope Leo is New York's very own Timothy Dolan.
And the Archbishop of New York is taking the time out of his very busy schedule to join us live from Rome in Vatican City. Good morning, Cardinal Dolan. Great to have you here. Thank you for making the time for us here in New York.
Dan and Hazel, thanks for the invite. I miss you all. I'm homesick. And Dan, I'm actually not that busy now because the big work is over. So
and you can finally talk. I know.
I can sit with you all morning if you want, all right?
You're here as long as you want. I know you go into the Sistine Chapel and you cannot speak. And so this is a big moment for you to be able to finally talk. So here we are, 4 votes in, Cardinal. Can you walk us through what exactly happened inside the Sistine Chapel, how you guys came to be with this individual, Pope Leo XIV now? Cardinal Prevost.
No. I can't. Dan, thanks for asking. I'm not surprised everybody else. I can't go into the details, but let me try to sketch some things so that you're not wasting your time and people are clicking to another channel as we speak. But anyway, so what very important, Dan and Hazel, what happens before the conclave might be important. I got to be honest with you two. When I arrived 2.5 weeks ago, so they had already begun. I missed the first two days of hooking because I couldn't get there till Wednesday. But then I began to join what they call the general congregations, where all the cardinals would meet. That's mighty important. And I was astounded that when I went in, here's this cardinal from the United States showing up.
Here is, the Jesuits have prepared the whole setup. He arrives from America, and he's, I mean, it's like a conference of U.S. bishops. Everybody knows each other. But the Jesuits had prepared a surprise with this guy from South America, but also from the United States. And look what Dolan says.
And all these guys are coming up to me saying, "Ma chi è questo Prevost?" Who is those? They said to me, "Conosce Roberto Francesco Prevost. Do you know Robert Francis Prevost?" And I had to say, "No, I know of him. I know he does great work here. I know he's greatly admired." And they said, "Well, he's a cardinal from the United States. You don't know him?" I said, "Well, we really never kind of considered him that because he was an Augustinian for one, and he lived most of his life in Peru. In fact, he's a Peruvian citizen. He was a tremendous missionary in Peru and loved the
He was a tremendous missionary. He was basically a missionary on behalf of the Jesuits because the Jesuits controlled South America.
So good to him. So I have to tell you, I didn't really know him, but I thought, Dolan, you better find out about him because they're all asking you. And secondly, if he's as good as the rest of them are leading you to believe, you better get to know him. So God willing, if the Holy Spirit so directs you,
the Holy Spirit. In fact, the people don't know that, but the headquarters of the Jesuit is called Borgo Santo Spirito, which is basically quarter of the Holy Spirit. You understand? So their Holy Spirit is there in the headquarters of the Jesuits.
So that was very important. And so once you get into the conclave, while I can't talk about the details, it's pretty much silent, Hazel and Dan. I mean, we say our prayers in Latin. We make our vows, our promise that we will vote with honesty and integrity. And then one by one, we go up to put the ballot in. And that takes a long time. And then there's the very laborious counting of the ballots, reading them out loud. So most of it is quiet. Now, look, I'm not I don't have to break any confidence here, but you all, as seasoned journalists, would know, and you've done your background, this conclave was rather quick.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, throughout the history of the church, there's conclaves that have gone on for 6 months. By the way, so was 2013. Remember,
Right. I was there too, I remember.
In fact, it was about the same length of time. That would lead a savvy observer like yourselves to say, there must have been some unanimity from the beginning.
Yes.
There was no shock here. So, yeah, so if that leads you to think that, hey, there was a great sense of unity, there was kind of appeal that this guy exerted right from the beginning.
Yes, there was. It was all organized, arranged, like I stated. It would be maximum 2 days. They will be all out. Yes, of course, it wasn't an African, but the Africans apparently they started arguing with each other because some are progressive, a lot of them are conservative, so they couldn't really bring an African pope to have the votes of everybody. And then there was the Italian, the 17 cardinals from Italy who still wanted to vote for Parolin. And then there was the ones that were pushing for Tagle, who on the first day of the conclave only managed to gather 18 votes. So in the end, they had to find the Jesuits had already prepared, in a stealth way, the entrance of the...
It's all staged.
Boom! And that's it. And now he's Pope.
It was a Jesuit play.
And of course, you can find all the details of how the Jesuits have been operating, and not only in the realm of religion, but of politics, of business, everything. They have created everything, guys. Unfortunately, they are in control of everything, and they seem to have really created the basis for everything in our society today. When they decided that their mission was education, it was to control the elite, and at the same time to control the narrative. That's why in academical circles, nobody has written a book against the Jesuits in the last few years. Actually, there has been probably only 3 books in the last 40 years. Malachi Martin, the Jesuits, Eric John Phelps in the year 2000 was the last book. And then there was Rulers of Evil in 1999. These are 3 books. I mean, 3 books. Nobody wants to talk about the subject. Very important one. But let me conclude with another important subject that was touched by the American cardinals at the conference with all the various journalists, because I told you that it's all about food. And the dish this year at the conclave was gnocchi. Gnocchi, yes. Yes, these are the cardinals who are discussing everything. And at the end, after all the disquisition about this and this other, it ended up with gnocchi.
So I think that I would imagine there was 1 or 2 that came with somebody else in mind. And
Yeah, sure.
What they heard.
Ooh. But in any case, guys, just to not waste too much of your time, they actually had the courage to say that the great dish was gnocchi, and that really the conclave was about tortellini usually, but it seems like gnocchi was the dish this year. Now, if you want to have some great gnocchi as well as some great food, you have to look no further than the Zagami Family Cookbook. This is really, guys, a book that is going to bring you all the Italian specialties, especially the ones that are...
Are you looking for the gnocchi?
No, I mean, gnocchi, but there is all kinds of food here. I don't have to only find the gnocchi. Yeah?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
It's one of the first things.
And one of the first things of this fantastic book full of fantastic recipes. Guys, when I go through the pages of this book, I get very hungry. The Zagami Family Cookbook is available, and it explains how to make fresh pasta, how to make fresh pizza. And guys, I think Christie's gnocchi must have been better than the ones at the conclave. You want to find it?
I can look in the index, which I put in the book.
Yeah.
If you guys don't have an index, then you can go on. Is it still on your website? Is this the
all these cardinals, and they were all thinking about food, guys. No Holy Spirit. There was no Holy Spirit. There was just a
I'm in
rigged
the
conclave
appetizers. I got
by
it.
the Jesuits.
Homemade gnocchi, page 58. Right there. That's the easy way to do it. 58. There's so many recipes, that's why. There's just too many. Here it is. Gnocchi.
Gnocchi. This is the dish they liked more at the conclave, guys. Try it. You have to, of course, get the Zagami Family Cookbook. And thank you so much for tuning in today. You have been very numerous. We are almost 300 live on Facebook, YouTube, and X, regardless of the fact that we were not able to broadcast on Rumble. And we don't really know if we will be able to broadcast again live on Rumble because things are really difficult. There seems to be some problems with this broadcast. So we're going to upload, of course, on Band of Video. And hello to all the people on Band of Video. My show with Alex the other day reached over 300,000 people.
And then it got like 1 million views on X.
So yes,
So,
thank you
'cause it
so
got
much
shared
for
on
your
X,
support.
so.
Thank you so much for making my latest book a bestseller. And of course, we see you next week. Please thank our sponsors once again because they've been very courteous and very kind.
Daniel Estes, thank you. Aaron Lesher, Aldo Rivera, Alex, is that Alex?
I don't know. It's Alex.
Nalga Rosada Minta.
Thank you so much.
Thank
If you want to become part of the sponsors, you can do it anonymously, you can do it publicly, and we will, of course, read your name. You can just leave a note when you donate with GoFundMe or when you donate with Cash App. You can find the Cash App handle on leozagami.com. At this point, we usually have the Italian rap, but you want to go back to Vincenzo viceversa. What do you prefer?
I don't know, Maury.
Okay, we can go back to our traditional track for the closure of the show. Please put a like and, of course, share it with your friends and family. If you want to know more about these subjects, I always advise you to purchase my books. And take care, guys. Have a great week. And, of course, if you encourage us more, we're going to be here with you for an extra show. But that depends from you and from our sponsorships. Willa!
In that time, our world has taken so many steps in the wrong direction. In the negative utopia, science, technology, social organization, dehumanization. In the negative utopia, science, technology, social organization. Technology, social organization, dehumanization. social organization,